just didn't understand that some people, just were that way. And I never looked at myself thinking, did I do something to offend them? And so I would just shrug it off. And that just comes from growing up in the South, where, folks can be particular, especially maybe even a little racist. You just live with it. And it never brought me down. In fact, it just encouraged me to work harder and move forward in my pursuits. So I began at home. I began with a small business, basically taking care of people's lawns, doing odd jobs. I would paint, basic repair at a very early age. And of course, they would ask me, do you really know how to do this? I would say, yeah, I do. And just give me a chance. And how I would convince them is I would be the lowest bidder out of everybody. I would mow lawns for the cheapest. I would do repairs for the cheapest. And eventually I earned their trust. And that was another strategy that I carried into my professional life. And that is, if you want people to invest in you, then you've got to earn their trust. And so at a very early age, I realized that that was a very important thing to have, almost more than money, and that is trust of people. So that's basically where I began. That was the beginning of my financial journey. And so it was more about developing myself and not necessarily, making money mowing lawns. So the lesson was actually deeper than that. And yes, the little money that I made did help. It helped put food on the table. It helped tremendously, especially back in the 70s. Things were difficult. We were just going over we were just recovering from the OPEC oil crisis. And of course, we had a fresh recession that we were recovering from. And so every little bit helped. Literally every cent counted. So that's basically where I began.
And how did you get through school? Who put you through school? Were your parents able to put you through school, or did you have to put yourself through school?
That's a very good question. So this again goes back to how one overcomes adversity. Again, back in the 80s and 90s, early 90s, I graduated high school in 1990. There really wasn't a lot for minority students per se. Access to education was generalized, and so you either had to be a very good sports person, or you had to be somebody who maybe had connections, especially with certain schools, certain scholarship committees. For me, I actually had two routes I could go through. I played football in high school. In my senior year, I was approached by the Patriots to go to camp. So I think I was okay in high school football. And then I developed a really good academic record starting in about the 10th grade. Ninth grade, I didn't think much of it at the time because college was too far away back in ninth grade. But I wish I really concentrated more in ninth grade. But I really applied myself in the 10th grade and above. With that, I was able to develop some good grades. I took some AP classes, college credit classes. And so what ended up happening there was I was invited by Chancellor Hackley from the University of North Carolina, Fayetteville State University, to become a Chancellor Scholar. So I won a scholarship to University of North Carolina. My parents, they didn't pay a cent for my education. So basically, this goes back to the original statement that I had said earlier about just keep working hard and you develop trust. And so in this phase in my life, the trust that I had developed, one, the athleticism. I was able to impress people because I could lift a lot of weight, I could run very fast, and I could push people around. So the sports people thought that I'd be a really good pick for whatever they wanted me to do. I played strong right offense, defense, tackle in football. Never got hurt, thank goodness. So I still have my legs, I still have my joints, everything's good. But the future for linemen really isn't that great for the NFL. The average lifespan is about 5 years, and then after that, you're pretty much debilitated. Um, so uh, I thought deeply, and this was me at the age of 16. I had to think deeply about my future, and that's the other lesson that I learned, and that is to succeed, you need to prepare now. Even though you're not where you think you're going to be, you still need to prepare. And this is true for anybody, no matter where you are and what stage in life you're at. You need to prepare for the future. So as a young person, I had these options. I could go and be very physical, go become a lineman, make a lot of money for 5 years, and then hope that'll last me for the rest of my life. The other is go into academics, learn a skill, learn a trade that will last me a lifetime. It won't earn me as much as an NFL career, but in the long run, I'll have my health, I'll have my insurance. I don't know if anybody knows this out there, but the NFL does not pay your health insurance, so you'd have to pay your own. So if you get really hurt, then you're out of luck. And fortunately for me, when I was in high school, I used to sack groceries for an NFL player. He would walk around with a cage around his legs, and he could barely walk, but he could walk. And he said that that was the result of arthritis from playing football. And he's the one who actually talked me out of going to the Patriots camp. He saw that I was very articulate, and because I would always talk to all my customers whenever I would sack groceries for them when I was a kid. And he was really impressed. One, by my size, I was an unusually tall 16-year-old, but he also said to me that I told good stories and that I was able to convey stories and messages very clearly. And he said that's a gift. And he said that it would be better if I developed that than hitting people on the football field. And so when I told him that I wasn't going to go to Patriots camp, he was very happy and he wished me well. And shortly thereafter, I got the scholarship. I went to school, and I guess basically the rest is history. Because of that, I had prepared for the academic side. I was ready for the next step, and that was learning my future trade, learning about what is it that I want to do, and of course, what are going to be the outcomes of the work that I do, especially how am I going to help not only myself, but my future family and people around me. So these are things that you have to consider when you're thinking about your future. And a lot of folks, the first thing that comes to their mind when they think of like college degrees and education, or even trade school. So let me make it clear, I'm not just talking about college. This could be any place where you learn a skill. So even if it's a 2-year trade school, or even a 1-year trade school where you learn a skill, always consider that we're not just talking about helping yourself. We're not just talking about money, but we're talking about how you can make a difference in the world and helping people with what you know. Because once you know it, you're responsible for that information. You're responsible for helping other people use that information and learn how to use it responsibly and effectively. So for me, it was a process of personal growth. And again, at the very beginning, it was out of necessity because, we had nothing and I had to do something, and I wasn't just going to stand around and watch everybody suffer. And so as a young person, a very young person, I developed the attitude of I can help. I can be part of the solution and not part of the problem. And that's where I began. But in my college years, I realized too that I had a lot to learn, especially about people. Now, as far as the technology goes, it all just came naturally to me. Programming, logic, electronics, it all just naturally came to me. So I didn't have to struggle. My key was understanding people and understanding where they were coming from and understanding attitudes. And the really neat thing is in my college career, I had a chance to meet some very interesting people who crossed my life and who helped give me some inspiration. At my first school, at University of North Carolina at Fayetteville State, I had a chance to meet Alex Haley, the author of Roots. I had a chance to meet Maya Angelou, Coretta Scott King, Martin Luther King's widow. We had a really great time, and since I was a Chancellor Scholar at the University of North Carolina, I was basically an honored guest at these events whenever they would come to the university. So they would come and give talks, and then afterwards there would be a dinner or a gathering, if you will, and they would invite me to be with them, to talk with them. And I began to see some common threads between their lives and what my life was becoming. And that is, every one of them had a difficult childhood. Every one of them had adversity, and every one of them overcame it, either through a strong faith or through literature and academics or through civic leadership. They all had something, that they had to overcome, and they overcame it with what they decided to use to become who they were. So that was my wake-up call, to use what I was learning in school as my means of overcoming. And of course, overcoming doesn't mean that I'm going to get back at whoever's keeping me down. The real enemy is the person looking at you in the mirror. It's not the people out there. It's the person who tells you you can't, in your head. And it's the person who tries to keep you down by saying you're not good enough. And so that's what adversity really is. It's not the person out there calling you racial epithets or mad at you because you don't look like them or talk like them. It's the person on the inside that keeps telling you can't and you're not good enough. And so all these famous people that I met all had the same problem. And that is, they were told they weren't good enough, not necessarily by the people around them, but by themselves. And they overcame that by developing their craft, by sharpening their skills, and of course by learning. And that's what I got by meeting them. That's what I received by being in their presence and talking with them. And there are things they told me that they've never published, that no one knows about. And I think that's a wonderful gift, to be able to understand walking, living legends and understand that their struggle is my struggle. So it put a human dimension to what they're doing and what they did, and helped me frame my life at the beginning. So at the very beginning of my college career, I knew that I had something special going on, and that was I had to not only learn what I was about to learn, but take it and make a change in people's lives. And so at a very early time, I realized that that was something that I had to do, and to expand upon what I was being taught. And it helped me make a few decisions, because for the longest time I was thinking to myself, what was I going to do with all this information that I was about to learn? And how was I going to grow as an individual? And how was I going to apply that towards the future? And of course, as you go through school, everyone thinks, oh, well, the 4-year degree, that's it, I'm done. I'm done with school. That's really not true. Once you're done with your first degree, it's just the beginning. You've got the basics out of the way. And then we start specializing in other skills, other trades beyond that. And so I always remembered what I saw and heard. And basically, as far as learning goes and education goes, enough is not enough. Because every day, even if you have all the degrees in the world, you still have to learn. And you have to continue learning, because what we've learned changes and the world changes. So I took the messages and the lessons I learned from these early mentors and built that into how I approached the world and how I eventually became a teacher. So that's basically that was my motivation behind becoming a Ph.D., behind becoming a professor. And that is, if I was going to share what I knew and be effective at it, then I needed to work hard to open that door. And that's basically what all degrees are. They're doors. And we have to then develop the motivation to open that door. That motivation is the handle or the doorknob, if you will, to the door. You got to be able to turn it and open the door. So you have to have motivation to do that. And so my motivation at the very beginning was helping people escape what I escaped. I had escaped abject poverty. I had escaped dysfunctionality. Of course, growing up poor, it's not a Cinderella story. It could be a nightmare for many people, especially if there's really not much to go around, or if you're surrounded by hostile people. Uh, a lot has to be done to escape that. But the initial battle that must be won is between yourself and negative points of views that we constantly barrage ourselves with, because we are our worst judge, uh, our own personal conscience. We have a tendency to be hard on ourselves, even if we're a perfectionist. What we've done may not be enough. We may not have achieved enough to satisfy whatever that is that's in our heads telling us that we're not good. So at a very early age, I learned to get a handle of that voice and teach it that we are good enough no matter what we do. And if we fail, it's not failure, it's learning. So there is no failure. So people shouldn't be afraid to try, because if if they don't succeed at what they do, it just means that we have to learn more to do it right to get to where we need to be. A lot of folks are suffering right now because they believe that they're not good enough. They believe that they are where they're at because of fate somehow, or a circumstance put them there, or a situation put them there. And that's not true. We have to overcome that attitude of I'm not good enough or I'm not worthy, because that's a personal shortfall of many people, especially people who are very talented and have abilities. They always hurt themselves by overjudging themselves. But in reality, they're very talented and they have the ability. They just have to learn to work well with themselves and be at peace with themselves and quiet those voices that tell them they're not good enough. And so that was my major hurdle that I had to overcome as a young person. That was my adversity. And how I overcame it, of course, was I learned. I went to school. And when I was done with that school, I went to school again. And then I went to school again. And even when I was done with that school, I'm still going to school. I'm still learning more. And that's what's propelled me to where I'm at. And that is lifelong learning. That is the key, I would say, also to happiness. As long as we're learning every day something new, as long as we are taking what we're learning to help other people, I think that is the true source of happiness. And again, you've never heard me mention money once. The money will come naturally. The money comes by itself. It's almost as a given. If you concentrate on what you love, you concentrate on your studies and your passion, the money just solves itself. Of course, I'm not going to say that I ignored the money. As the saying goes, mama didn't raise a dummy. I made sure that every amount of money that I had raised, that I had made, was wisely invested. And later on in tonight's talk, I could talk about that. But in the meantime, my beginnings were very humble, and my journey through school was very humble. And so with that, I just absorbed everything that I saw and heard and experienced, and made sure to incorporate the lessons that I learned from those experiences into the ventures that I do today, especially when I do outreach to students, when I work with other universities, when I talk with anybody, whether it's a person on the street or the president of a corporation. It doesn't matter who it is. I just make sure that I treat them with the same amount of respect, and that I listen. I listen more to them than my talking about what I have to say. So I really appreciate you giving me the forum to talk, because usually the individuals who get locked in a room with me like this are my students, and they pay for it. So I really appreciate the opportunity to just share a lot of the experiences that I have experienced, and just convey just my love and happiness for people, and just the opportunity to serve them. And that's the other lesson, and that is, once we've overcome the negativity that lives within us, then we realize that we are an agent of change in the world, and that we can change the world maybe one person at a time, one student at a time, one show at a time, and make a positive impact.
Certainly, what you have to say is just so incredible. This show is about overcoming adversity and creating your own future, and not waiting around for a fairy godmother or a Prince Charming. What happens if you don't have any of those? How do you pull yourself out of your financial situation? Now, when you first graduated out of school, what was your first job? What did you do to make money? What happened there?
Okay, well, my first job was working for Texas Instruments. For any of y'all who have a cell phone or a DVD player or drive a car, I probably made the chips, especially if your car was made in the 90s. I probably made the chips that were in those vehicles. My responsibility at Texas Instruments was making sure that the designs were accurately followed and that the chips were made correctly. And so it was a very demanding job, required a lot of detail. And I had to understand the chip architecture and the designs. So, but to make a simple explanation about semiconductor science, if you can make a cake, you can make a computer chip. So, because it requires a lot of detail, you have to have recipes. You have to understand the chemistry between each level. So as you're making a computer chip, you're making these layers of a cake. And in between the layers, and so you've got multi-dimensions, right? So you've got the layers, and then you've got the chip itself. You have potential problems that can come from that. And so my job was to make sure that the design was followed correctly, especially when you have over 300 people in a fabrication facility, each doing an individual job. What happens if somebody does something wrong by accident? What happens if a machine is not operating correctly? What happens if something bad happens? It was my job to find it and to recognize it. And so, again, this my detailed view of process management, and of course, if you ever mowed a lawn before, you can step back and look at a lawn and see which part you missed, especially if you see weeds or if you see extra blades of grass. You develop a little bit of OCD. You're not satisfied until the job's done right. And so from my childhood, that's what I used to do. I used to just look at people's yards after I was done with them to see if I had done a good job. I didn't wait for the customer to tell me whether I did a good or bad job. I made sure that I took care of the job. And so I took that attitude into making computer chips, into making wafers for Texas Instruments. And so that can-do attitude and the attitude for quality is what drove me to succeed. And I really enjoyed the job. The job lasted for about 8 years. And it was one of the best jobs in Lubbock, Texas. That's where I lived at the time. And then at the end of '98, they shut the fab down for whatever reasons. Even though it was one of the most productive fabs with the least amount of scrap, Texas Instruments decided to shut it down, and they sold it to another company who kept the place down for about 2 years while they retooled it for a new product. At the time then, I was out of a job. So there was a bump in the road towards happiness. The good news is that when I lost that job, the federal government had a program that allowed me to go back to school for free if my job was taken by a foreign company. And the company that bought TI was XFAB, and they're a German / Japanese company. and they did that. And so then I was told, well, the good news, well, the first bad news, you lost your job. The good news is you can go back to school and the government will pay for it. So with that, I went back and got my master's degree because I was a semiconductor expert, and last time I checked, Lubbock, Texas did not have any other jobs that required that skill. And so, but that's okay because later on in my life, those semiconductor skills will come back. The other lesson I learned is whatever you learned never goes away. There's always going to be a use, no matter how rare the knowledge is or how remote the opportunities are to use those skills, you'll still be able to use them somewhere else. So this is a happy ending. So unemployment was actually a good thing because, you know, I had thought that I was going to work for TI for my whole life and I was going to retire there. And I was happy as can be because engineering, you know, it was easy for me. And I thrived in that environment. The technology there was easy to grasp. I had free reign at that corporation, but it wasn't meant to be. And so I felt like I was being drawn to do other things. And so when I went back to school, the next job that I had acquired was working at Texas Tech University. They were looking for somebody who could understand the Linux programming language, and they were looking for somebody who could help them run a supercomputer. Of course, back in 98, 99, not many people understood what those were. Back then, they used to be called Beowulf clusters. You can Google that. It's basically, they named it after a character from the Beowulf saga for those literature folks out there. So if you've ever read Beowulf or watched the movie, that's where they got a lot of their ideas and their words because Beowulf cluster was basically a big computer made out of smaller computers, sort of like a monster like Grendel from the tale. And in fact, one of our supercomputers was named Grendel. And that was our pastime because computer scientists are nerds. And so we do a lot of reading and we name our computers after, you know, princesses and monsters and things like that. And so that's why the first supercomputers were called Beowulfs. But yes. So, Amber, did you want to say something? No?
I just unmuted myself, sorry.
Okay. So I took what I knew and developed supercomputers at Texas Tech for well over 16 years. And during that time, I was given free reign to learn about the skill, to help the university and learn about, you know, what do people use supercomputers for? And so I learned about how the professors would use them to do really large computations that you normally couldn't do on a regular computer, you know, like a desktop or a laptop. And then back in the 90s and early 2000s, computers really were very slow. And there were a lot of problems that couldn't be solved on just a regular desktop. So they needed something with more power, more speed, more memory. And so that's what the supercomputers did. They provided the playground for a lot of these bigger problems that could be solved in a reasonable amount of time. Now, back then, a reasonable amount of time was anywhere between 7 days and 2 months. And that was the very beginning of supercomputing. But if you were to run those same jobs on a desktop or on a laptop, it would take years for the job to finish. So this is where supercomputing comes in. And so what do we do with supercomputing? We model molecules, we model atoms, we simulate drugs to see if they will work on a patient when they're sick. So, and we also simulate the human body. We simulate life expectancy from a mathematical point of view. We do mathematical research to see if there are experimental numbers that exist or not. And some of these numbers are called prime numbers. So back in 2007, I found the 5th largest prime number in the world, working with the mathematical researchers. That was fun. And it ran on my supercomputer, so I got the credit for it. But so part of the experience at Texas Tech was not only was I a computer scientist, but I was beginning to understand how other disciplines worked. And so not only was I a computer scientist, I was a chemist, I was a physicist, I was a biologist, I was a mathematical researcher. Even there's the soft sciences even used it. The psychology department used it. The business department used it, which is interesting. Keep that in mind in the back of your head. When I was working with the business people, that was going to set the stage for future success. So even though I didn't go and use, chemistry and physics for everything that I did in the future, these skills that I learned went into my toolbox. And this is something that we all have to carry with us, a mental toolbox of skills that we need to remember, that we learned. And of course, it never hurts to write it down. Have a journal. For me, I have a hard drive just full of files, almost 20 years worth of them. And if I need to reference something that I did or a solution that I created, I can go back and look at my work. And so I can look at, all of my solutions. So again, it's these habits that I learned how to become successful by learning how to remember what I did. That's being organized. So I organized my what's going on in my brain. And then two, I always learn something new. So at Texas Tech, I was encouraged to continue my education. So it was there where I took the opportunity to work on my Ph.D. at the same time while I was working there. And that was a different experience altogether. The classes were easy. My Ph.D. is in information systems. It's a branch of computer science where I am a data expert. My understanding of data and how it's managed and how it could be applied towards anything is basically the skill that I learned in my PhD program. And that is also going to be something that's going to be something that's going to change my future as well. So my story is not finished yet, because basically everything that I've learned from semiconductor science, from computer science, from collaborating with all these world-class professors and scientists, and then and of course the ethics and just basic work ethic that I learned from mowing lawns as a child all play into the future. And so working at Texas Tech, I had been given many opportunities to develop my research acumen and to develop how I approach problems. I was approached by several universities. As Ro had said, I had taught in Mexico. I led a workshop there at their MIT. It's called Monterrey Tech. And then I was invited by China, and this was before COVID and everything ever happened, to take a 30-day tour to talk about my work at 11 other universities. So I had a chance to meet my Chinese counterparts and meet the students. The students are great, and so are my counterparts too. They really love the United States. They want to come visit. They want to go to school here. They basically want to live here, and I don't blame them. It's the U.S. is a fun place, but China is too. It was a good country. I had a chance to live with them, eat with them, work with them, and it's very different. By the way, it's not like how things are here in the West. It's just different, and there's lots of videos you can watch online that talk about life in China. It's a different place because they're very advanced in some things, and in some things they're not. But I really concentrated on the teaching and the learning, less on what they didn't have, but more on what they did have. And with that, they were very grateful, and they were very happy to see me. And so I had a very good time there, and everybody learned a lot. The Chinese students did, I did. And then at the end of that, that was pretty much close to my stay at Texas Tech. I stayed at Texas Tech for 16 years, and that's when I was approached by a assistant vice president from the University of Texas at Dallas, a really good friend of mine who is no longer with us, but he did invite me to come and be part of this new center that they're building, a new supercomputing center. And so I applied and I got the job within like a week or two. So I guess they really needed the help. But they started off where Texas Tech was right around 2006, 2007, when we bought our first cluster. And then I was able to hire some people to help out. And we've built up a team. And so from 2018 until now, I've been at University of Texas at Dallas, leading their cyber infrastructure team for supercomputing. And as you can see, everything that I've done in the past has built up to now. All the skills that I learned from the other professors at Texas Tech, the skills that I learned about the supercomputer, computer science, my Ph.D., all that got applied towards what I'm doing at the University of Texas at Dallas now, and my responsibility has increased, and the same with my position, right? So at Texas Tech, I started off as assistant administrator. I worked my way up to a senior administrator, then from there to research associate, then to senior research associate, which is basically a senior scientist position. And it took 16 years to walk up the ranks, and then I joined UTD as a director. And so my responsibilities have increased tremendously, where everything that I've learned has been applied towards those responsibilities. And so, and then to add a twist to it, then I was approached by the dean of the business school, and he asked me if I was willing to teach business analytics, because one thing you do in supercomputing is you analyze data. I mean, you spend a lot of money building this very large computer so that we can take large amounts of data and compute it in a very short period of time. So instead of taking years and years to process lots of data, it takes a couple of days to use the supercomputer. And that's why that computer is so super, because it does a lot of work in a short period of time. And so I took all that into stride. And so now I'm teaching what they call big data. So it's a branch of business analytics, and it teaches people how to approach the problem of how do I solve a lot of these data-centric issues. How do I solve, or how do I go through a large amount of data in a short period of time, especially if time is of the essence. And a lot of folks aren't aware of a lot of big data problems that have been a problem for a long time, but we're getting a handle on it. One of them is the weather. Whenever you look at the TV and you see somebody talking about the weather, somebody had to run a model, and that model took time, and it had to run on a supercomputer. So these days, I would say the last decade, the weather has gotten better. We've gotten better at predicting how much rainfall is going to happen, the direction of the wind, and the temperature. A lot of that is computer driven. Before supercomputers, a lot of people didn't know this, they were using the Farmer's Almanac. And basically the Farmer's Almanac was the previous year's weather. Now, a lot of interesting things people don't understand about weather data, and that is it's cyclical, which means that whatever happened last year on this day, there's a possibility it's going to happen again a year later on that day, because there's a cycle, it's a weather cycle, and it repeats. So whenever you hear a weather person say, well, it's a 30% chance of rain today, or it might, there's a 40% chance that the sun will shine completely or there'll be clouds. They don't necessarily mean that there's a formula that they put all the information in and said that these are the percentages. What it is they're looking at the Farmer's Almanac data. Well, nowadays they're using data that they've collected with computers and with sensors, but they're using the same method. And that is they're averaging the previous year's rainfall and when it occurred, and then they're projecting that to today. And so let's say in the last 3 years, it rained only half the time this coming day. Well, that means that there's a 50% chance it rained. So very simple. But nowadays with computer models, we can be very accurate. I mean, the weather people can get real nerdy and say, well, we have an 11.2 chance that it's going to rain today because of all the data that they've gathered. So a lot of things have changed how, we do things because of the advancement of supercomputers and the application of the knowledge that we've gained from it. So with that, at the University of Texas at Dallas, I was given opportunity to teach. So I'm going on year 4 teaching in the graduate school, and we've done some very interesting projects. What I ask my students to do is, once they've learned big data technology, is to have a end of semester project where they use the supercomputer and they solve real world problems. So I've had students create models for diabetes, heart failure, for chronic illnesses, so that people can, one, predict morbidity, how long does somebody have to live, or two, if we made some changes to lifestyles, how much more time can somebody gain from just changing their diet or exercise, or there's so many variables within a physiological makeup that you can change to positively affect someone's health. And so a lot of my students were into that, because back home, a lot of my students, I don't know if you know this, are from India. And so a lot of the students have parents who are sick. The parents work real hard to get them to the United States to go to school, but at a cost, a really terrible cost. And that is at the cost of their health. There's a lot of folks in India that are suffering from diabetes and heart disease, stress, things of that nature. And so the students wanted to know, well, how do I help mom and dad? And that reminds me of when I was a kid. When we didn't have money, the first thing that came to my head was, how do I help mom and dad? And so my solution was to get out there and get the lawnmower and put it to work. And these young people in the graduate school, instead of grabbing the lawnmower, they took the knowledge that I taught them, and they created solutions to help their parents out. And so they would create these models that would talk about what they could do to improve their health, and they would share it with their parents. And so this is something I think is really nice to see, that they're taking what they're learning and they're helping their families out, they're helping their people out. And that in itself was basically prophetic at the very beginning of my life, when I noticed that when I really put a good effort into something, it made people happy. And I can see this attitude. It's infectious, and it gets into my students. And of course, I listen to them, because I let them speak, and they tell me about how hard life is in India. But the reality is that in India, not everybody is educated. A lot of folks say, well, India, they're up and coming, and they have a lot of folks in technology, but it's a very small number, actually. They have over 1 billion people. And what will shock you is that I would say the majority of them are illiterate. And so when you have illiteracy, you have poverty, no matter how you cut it. It doesn't matter what country you're in, what ethnicity you're in. If you're illiterate, you're not going to have any money. You're going to be in poverty. And so with that, I encourage them to go back. I understand they want the American dream. I understand they want the big house, the fast car, the American, apple pie. But really, their country needs them. And they need to take what they're learning here and take it back and share it, and build their industries and get everybody educated. And that's where, in my field, in information systems, that's where online learning comes in, because that's the technology side that I learned in my Ph.D., and that is, you use information systems to create online colleges, online trade schools. We can train people to do anything. It's just that, one, we have to have the infrastructure, and two, we have to have people willing to teach. And so I have the people willing to teach. They're graduating from my graduate classes. Now the infrastructure is about to go online. For those of y'all who are familiar with Elon Musk, he developed something called an internet system called Starlink. His goal was to create a worldwide internet access where, where people live who are like remote, if they can't afford it, it's free. And so Elon's vision is to use the internet to teach people in the middle of nowhere, like in the middle of like the rainforests, or in the middle of India where there's no infrastructure, or any place where that's remote, to give them the opportunity to learn something new. And it doesn't even have to be a college class. It could be something as simple as hygiene, how to create clean drinking water. That alone will save millions of lives. You will not imagine how many people die every year because their water is filthy. So they just need something really basic. They don't need to do computer science yet. That's maybe for another generation or two. Right now, we have to start with basics: food and water. There's a lot of countries that are very rich. They have really good soil. They even have water. It's just that they don't have the infrastructure, nor do they have the people who know how to turn all that into something prosperous. And so this is where I say all the things that I've learned in the past are coming to fruition. They're going to have a purpose, and that is we will take the knowledge that we've learned and we will develop it into classes and into information that people can then use throughout their lives. And thanks to Elon Musk and others, we'll be able to convey this knowledge through the internet, through the free Starlink system. And this is where I think the next chapter in our development as people on Earth, we're going to take advantage of that technology. And maybe one day we will green the deserts. We'll use the technology that we have to make the deserts sprout grass and flowers and wheat and food for everybody. Again, it has nothing to do with that, with our technology. We can do it. It's just that we have to teach people that they can do it, and we have to convince them that they can. Right now, there's a lot of poor people out there, and they're waiting for the next handout. They're waiting for the next bag of grain, the next bag of beans, and they need to be given hope that with knowledge and with a can-do attitude, they can turn that around and start cultivating their fields, cleaning their water, and then educating their children. Because right now there's a terrible cycle, and that is there are parents with a third grade education raising children up to a third grade education. And so we have to change all that. And so we're going to do that with technology. Here in the West, we have to take what we know, and we have to tailor that information to the need, right? So let's begin with something basic. Let's begin with basic energy production, wind, solar. Let's start with cleaning their water. Let's get clean water to everybody so everyone can be well. They won't have to be so sick. And if you're not sick, and of course we have to fix the food problem. We need to help them with cultivation. And I don't mean sending them, airdrop seeds and tell them get to work. I think we need to send tractors. We need to send, like we send soldiers, like we send bombs. We need to send tractors and farmers to work side by side with them and teach them how to cultivate correctly, how to irrigate correctly. And once they have food and water, they'll be prepared to learn because they won't be hungry. They won't be sidetracked. And that's been something that I've noticed growing up in the South. And that is a lot of people, they couldn't pay attention in class. They were tired because they ate yesterday. They didn't have food that morning. They didn't have breakfast. So they were tired and they were hungry. How can they learn? I had extra food because I was able to make the extra money to get it. I had the wherewithal to do it, but not everybody has that. And so they would sort of coast through school, always tired, never saying anything. And then when they graduate, they don't know what to do. They're sort of in limbo, wondering what to do. And so some of these folks just went to work for a local business, working minimum wage for almost 20 years. And they wonder what the heck happened. What happened to my life? I'm old now. So what we need to do is we need to start with basics, just like I did at the very beginning. You start small and you fight your inner demons. You put those to rest. And then once you've done that, then you can start developing a plan, and it's not necessarily a plan about taking over the world. It's about taking over yourself. How do I control myself? How do I overcome that which is keeping me from being the best person that I can be? Because again, it's so easy to point the finger at somebody else and say, "Oh, it's that guy over there. It's his fault. That's why I'm not successful today. It's his people that kept me down." No, when we look at the mirror, that's the person that's keeping us down. That's the person. And so I had to make peace with that individual. I had to make peace with my inner demons, and I had to make peace with how I felt about people, that they would say mean things to me because of how I looked or how I talked or how I walked. I had to make peace with all of that. And once I did, then I had no more enemies. I had put them down. I had put them aside. And all that was left for me at the time was learning. And I just learned and learned and learned for several years, decades. In fact, I'm still learning today. So we're taking what we're learning in the schools, in the universities, and we're trying to make a difference in the community. And so that was one of the things I did back at Texas Tech. I was what was called a mentor, and the mentors would help students out, especially if they were about to drop out of school. Now, this program that I worked with in particular was called Mentor Tech, and Mentor Tech was designed to intercept minority students who were going to drop out of college. Because what was happening was we were able to recruit minority students in the college, but 75% of them dropped out by the time they were sophomores. And the reasoning behind that was they weren't properly prepared for the fields of study that they were trying to go into. A lot of them wanted to do computer science, which is a really great career. A lot of them wanted to go into engineering, which is another great career. But if you aren't prepared academically, if you don't have the math background, if you don't understand the work ethic involved, then it's going to destroy you. You will not succeed. And so what we did in the mentoring program was we were able to intercept people who weren't going to graduate, and we came up with a plan to get them graduated. So I would help tutor them in math. I have a degree in math, by the way, so I have a background in it, and I helped them, especially a lot of our engineering students. And the first engineering student that I helped graduate in the program, her name was Elizabeth Guerrero. She was actually the first Hispanic female to graduate from the Texas Tech College of Civil Engineering. So we were making a difference in the program. A lot of firsts took place. A lot of our African American students, they succeeded in engineering, they succeeded in computer science, and they graduated to go on to become MDs and lawyers. And so we just had to create a program that showed people that we cared. And also we had to come up with a way to allow the university to give them a chance, to give the students a chance to at least learn to a point where they could graduate, right? Because a lot of the problems that these students came into the university wasn't even the university's fault, and it wasn't even the high school's fault. Again, this goes back to the statement that I said about growing up in the South. If children are going to school hungry, they're not going to learn. And the schools, they just want to graduate them. They want to just move them out. They don't want, a 20-year-old senior at the school because they just kept failing. In fact, that's where the schools have failed us. And that is, one, nutritionally, I think school lunches, breakfasts, even an early dinner should be provided at all schools, and they should be free because our tax dollars pay for it all anyway. Nobody should be hungry at school. This is one of the primary failures of school, not necessarily the teaching, but the fact that there are students there who can't concentrate because they're starving. This has nothing to do with academics. This has everything to do with humanity. The schools have to be more humane. And so that's something I had to overcome growing up. And I felt sad for these students. I did. But I was able to overcome hunger. If you look at me today, you'll definitely see that I have overcome hunger. But you'll see that, you know, later on, this will pour into a more systemic problem, and that is all around the United States, we have people who are still going through the same problem, and it's the year 2022. You know, I was going through school in the 1970s and 80s, and I have to say those were difficult years because, you know, we had the OPEC oil crisis, we had Iran-Contra, we had a lot of just a lot of bad things going on in our country. I know we have the recession going on right now, but that doesn't make things any better for the students who again, don't have anything to eat, and they're required to study and make the grade and make it to school. And so this has been a challenge for me at the university, and that is, how do I keep these students engaged? And even at the university, we have students that are starving. And so we have something called the Comets Cupboard. By the way, the Comet is the mascot for UTD. It's this character. It's like a human with a comet head. It's called T-Mock, kind of scary looking. But we have this thing called the Comet Cupboard, where students can just go and get food. You know, we have canned food, macaroni, ramen noodles, and whatever they can carry, they can take back to their dorms or to their apartments and eat. No questions asked. But so hunger is a big issue because not everybody can go to school on a scholarship like I did and have everything like I did. So I understand some of these students, they have sick parents that gave everything for them to go to school. So I understand. So a lot of the things that I have benefited from, a lot of it was the benefits of, well, scholarship, and two was luck. When you get a scholarship, you're lucky. And that scholarship pays for a lot of things. It pays for your books, your class, food, things of that nature. And so I consider myself very lucky. But I also knew that I had to take that opportunity and run with it, kind of like a football. You got that football, you got to take it to the other side of the field to get a point. That's what we have to do when life gives us an opportunity. You run with it and you make that point. You run across the field and don't let anything stop you. And so, but there are things that do stop people. Hunger is one of them. The other one is just people not caring. So if a student feels like nobody cares, if nobody's watching, then they're going to fail because, you know, they feel like they're abandoned. And that's something that we have to change in our education system as well. But, you know, if you think about it, that's how the people who are starving in other countries feel. They feel like they're abandoned, not only just by their peers and by their countrymen, but by the world. And you can hear it in their complaints when they complain about the West, when they complain about, you know, the rich countries. They feel like they've been left behind. And that's something that they have to understand and deal with themselves, just like the rest of us have who've been in the same situation. But again, this goes back to what I said about if the United States is going to make a difference in the world, if we're going to help with hunger, if we're going to help with education, then we have to lead by example. And that means not airdropping, you know, MREs from an airplane, but airdropping farmers, equipment, airdropping professors, and working and creating universities in these places where poverty exists. Because where education exists and knowledge exists, poverty has no foothold. It can't. So so this is where my life journey has led me, and that is learning about how to succeed comes from within, comes from looking at your own personal failures, looking at your own personal attitudes, and taking a hard look at them and making change there. You know, there's a video that I really enjoy. It's written by Todd Rundgren, and I play it all the time for my friends. And the title of the song is "How Can I Change the World If I Can't Change Myself?" And so this is something I think everybody should at least view once in their life. Is that music video? It's on YouTube. I think it's very powerful because a lot of times we can be our own worst judge and jury. We can also be our worst enemies because we're filling ourselves with negativity that's not real. Because we're upset because we don't have the newest car, or the biggest house or the largest bank account. And so we beat ourselves up for that. We're like, I could have done this and I could have done that. I could have had a bigger house. I could have had more money. But the reality is that none of that's important. What's important is what is it that you have done for yourself that you can do for others? And so for me, it was education. For me, it was learning and taking all that and being able to reproduce myself, so to speak, through my students. So any of my students who may be listening tonight can attest to that. And they can tell you that the first thing that I talk to them about is something called the real world. In the classroom, I remind them that this is the place where you make mistakes. But in the real world, some of these mistakes could end your career. Some of these mistakes could end your progress. So I always remind them about this real world and that they have to overcome their personal issues when dealing with the real world. And part of that is just learning the skills that we learn in the classroom. The other half is how often do we use those skills? So that's where work ethic comes in. So when you start your career, are you just going to put in an 8-hour day? Or are you going to put in a 10-hour day? Are you going to put in a 15-hour day? Or are you going to get the job done? Are you going to do what it takes? Like in football, are you going to do what it takes to get the football to the other side of the field to earn the team the point? So sometimes the task will take longer than 10 hours. So if they can adopt a work ethic that will carry them across the field to the goal, even though it may take them 15 hours, then that's the work ethic they need to have to be successful. Now, later on, when you become a veteran at whatever you do, you're not working 15 hours because you've got the benefit of experience. You've got the knowledge. So instead of it taking 15 hours, it may take you 3, it may take you 2, it may take you 1. Again, that's not a license to, get relaxed. This should actually be a warning sign. Well, this job's becoming too easy. Maybe I need to be learning some more things. So don't ever feel comfortable that you know it all. Don't ever feel comfortable that you are where you need to be and you're done. To me, that's a personal warning. When life gets too easy, there's something happening, and that I need to be aware of it, and I need to do something about it. And that usually means I need to start learning. I need to start reevaluating my environment. Why is everything too easy all of a sudden? So with that, you have to have this attitude where you're always ready for failure. But also remember too, that failure isn't failure if you look at it this way. And that is, failure is actually learning. Because you've learned about what doesn't work. And you try to take that failure, you turn it around, and you create a solution from that. And that's learning. It's only failure when you give up, when you made a mistake and you're like, I'm not good at this. I'm out of here. I'm giving up. I quit. That's failure. So again, I teach this to my students a lot. And that is, there are going to be days where you just messed up. You just totally messed up a data set. You created a report and it wasn't correct. It was wrong. And it made a lot of people angry. It's a mistake. So use that mistake to learn. Mm-hmm. And so you've learned from that mistake, you've become successful at it, at whatever issue you've overcome, and you're better for it. So this is an attitude that we need to have, we need to convey, but not only just with students, but with our kids. When we're raising children, we need to let them know, you're going to make a mistake. Learn from it. Don't run from it. It doesn't mean that you're no good at something. It just means that at that time, you didn't have enough information to get the job done. So from this situation, let's learn from it and let's see what we can do better next time. So this is something mom and dad should be talking to their kids about. And so again, it's a systemic problem that we ran into at Mentor Tech. And that is, not only were we battling hunger, we were battling apathetic schools who basically didn't care. And then we're battling attitudes that parents are transferring to the students, as little children. They're telling them things that aren't true. And they become part of their psyche as they get older, as they become adults. You know, don't listen to certain teachers because they don't look like you. Don't talk like certain teachers because they don't talk like you. Learn to hate authority. Learn to fear authority. Things like of that nature only set you back. If anybody teaches you to hate something or fear something, it sets you back. It puts chains on your mind, and it makes you not want to explore things like science, like literature, like technology, because the people you don't like, these are the people who are teaching it. And so we have to get away from that philosophy that somehow if people don't talk like us, act like us, speak our language, if they don't believe what we believe, then we must fear them and hate them. We should never do that to children. It's the worst thing anybody can do to a child, and that is teach them to hate. But this is something that we have to deal with as an educator, as a professional educator at the highest level of the university. That's what I've had to deal with. I've actually had students just come to me and say, "Hey, do you really believe some of these things you're talking about?" I'm like, yes, I do, because I've seen the fruit. It's kind of like planting a tree, and you're talking about this fantastic fruit that this tree can make, but nobody's ever seen the fruit before. They don't recognize it, but it's the most delicious fruit that you can have. But when you tell people about it, they don't believe you because they've never seen the fruit, they've never touched the fruit, they've never tasted it. And here's the key: the only way they can eat this fruit if they plant the tree themselves and then taste of the fruit. They can't taste my fruit. Nobody can have what's on my tree because it's my tree. It's unique. Nobody can taste my fruit. But if someone else cultivates their own system, their own tree, a tree of knowledge, if you will, then the fruit that they take from that fruit, from that tree, will be theirs, and it will be sweet, and it will be unique because it's theirs. Because what I grow on my tree is way different than what other people grow on theirs. But at some point, there'll be an understanding. They'll come back to me and they'll say, you know, Dr. Perez, you told me that if I just stuck through with this degree, I finished this program, and I started my career, no matter what, that I would succeed, and that I would benefit from the fruits of my labor. And they do approach me years later, and they even show me their kids, and they tell me, you were right. You were right. All these years that I put into my studies, I started my career with this company, and everything's great. We don't have to worry about a house payment. We don't have to worry about our bills. My kids are healthy. My wife is happy. Thank you. And this is something that happens all the time when I run into my students. You know, I've been teaching university for 20 years. So you can imagine I'm a grandparent now. Not actual, but my students their kids are having kids. So that's how long I've been in the field. This is how long I've been teaching. And so it's really nice to see not only are my lessons helping my students, but it's helping their kids. And this is how we're going to change the world. One student at a time, one classroom at a time. And thanks to programs like this, one program at a time, people need to hear the good news, and that is there's a way out. There's a way out of poverty. And yes, it requires a 4-letter word. It's called work. You can't get away from it.
There's nothing around it.
No, not at all. And so we have this this opportunity now that we have the technology, we have the internet, we have each other. We can share the good news, and we can lift everybody up no matter where they're at, no matter where they live. We can reach out. And Elon Musk, he's making the world a little bit smaller with Starlink. And I understand folks have politics. You know, they're like, oh, I don't like Elon because he's political. Well, again, you have to look at the fruit of the tree. If he's going to provide free internet to people in the middle of nowhere, I don't care what language, what religion, whatever this guy represents, because he's going to be doing good for the poor. He's going to be helping people who need it. That's all he needs to do. If whatever else he believes in, that's his business. It's not mine, because then I am going to be able to help those poor people and help them understand how to make clean drinking water, help them understand how to grow the best crops in their part of the world. See, that's the other problem too with the West. We keep telling people, grow wheat, grow wheat, grow wheat. Well, guess what? In Africa, it's yams, it's sweet potatoes. grow those. They don't even need water. Just grow those. But we need to tell people and help them understand how to benefit the most from where they live. So that's what we're going to do now in our next stage. And that goes back to my career here at University of Texas at Dallas. I'm teaching people how to use technology to make money from data. And that's all big data is. We're going through data, we're exploring it, we're trying to find trends. And with that, we can then answer a lot of hard questions in business and in any corporation. We can figure out where the money's leaking. Money leaks out of everything, by the way. And so with big data, we get a complete view of the business, where money is coming in, where it's leaving. And then there's like these little holes of where money just disappears into the nothingness. And it's those holes that we're interested in, because then if we can plug those holes up, then we stop losing money. If we stop losing money, we're profitable. And so that's how we use big data to make companies profitable. But not only that, we can make governments profitable if we just did an analysis of the governments. But so far, as of late, the Federal Reserve hasn't been audited since the 70s. So maybe we need to go and take a look at those people and find out where all that money went using the technology. And we can. If I was given all the data of the Federal Reserve, I could give you an answer in about a week.
How about the Defense Department?
All of them. All of them.
And the supercomputers.
Give me the data, and I will give you the truth.
Wow.
But
Dr. Perez, I've seen FinTech, that course. Could you touch that briefly on that, what FinTech is about? Or is that something that you're related to what you were talking about, using analytics or like a technology to help the financial or business systems?
Yes. So I was actually paired up with a company. They're still around in Texas. They're called Happy State Bank, and they have over $8 billion in assets.
Wow.
So my team and I at Texas Tech, we were asked to help them understand about commodities and their futures. So what does that mean? Well, there's a lot of folks, a lot of families in Texas that own oil wells. And a lot of their worth, a lot of their values based on oil. Now, right today, I know these families are very happy because oil is at an all-time high. And so I know financially they're doing very good. However, Happy State asked my team and I to do some predictions. So with big data, with FinTech, we can do analytics that will project the value of commodities into the future. So that's called projection. And if we wanted to see the past performance of something, we would then do something called regression, which is a different type of analysis. But we can look into the past with present day data. And so that's what we did. We got present day data of all the oil wells in Texas. And so my team and I, we did an analysis of the profitability. And this is called stress testing. So whenever you do a stress test on any kind of stock or any kind of commodity, it's basically the question, what if? So like, what if the market was a bull market? What if like right now we're in a weird situation. We're in where we have both inflation and we have recession. So it's called stagflation. So they're making a lot of the value of their oil has gone up, but they can't sell it, if that makes any sense. So they're happy that they're worth a lot on paper, but they really can't make any money off of it because of the recession. The dollars aren't worth the amount to get the oil out. So it's a terrible situation to be in. We did calculate the possibility of a recession right now. My team and I did. And so with that, we're able to then calculate the value of the oil that's in the ground. And also that there's a corresponding value in the bank. How many dollars can that equate to? And so then that will then be the valuation that the bank can say, oh yeah, that's an asset that we will claim as collateral for whatever. You know how banks work, right? when you own something, you can use it as collateral and then get money out of the bank. Well, this is how farmers do it. This is how people who own corporations do it. This is how people who own oil wells do it. And that basically they are trying to convince the bank, I really do have $1 million worth of oil under the ground. And the bank's like, are you sure about that? And so there are surveys, there's geological data. So this is where my experience in geological information systems come in that I learned working for the High Performance Computing Center. We're able to take that data and we're actually able to convert it into dollars so that the bank can have the assurance that, oh yeah, there really is $1 million worth of oil underneath this oil derrick. And so with that, we were able to predict the value of the oil in a bearish market or in a bullish market.
Oh,
And then we had a third analysis where nothing changed. The markets were static, which really only happens a couple of times. The market was static during the Trump years. So nothing much changed. Things went to hell before Trump and after Trump for whatever reasons. But that's the way things go. But we have the data to prove it. So this isn't the political discussion. This is more about what are the facts.
Yep.
And the facts are that we're experiencing stagflation because of the amount of oil that's in the system. The price of fuel is outrageous because of the supply of oil. And of course, the value of the dollar has gone down, which means our dollar doesn't buy as much as it used to. And in the last 2 years, the value of the dollar has fallen over 40%. So it's difficult to say, I've got the money and I want to buy $1 million worth of oil, whereas in reality, that dollar can only buy 60 cents worth of oil that's in those wells. And so there's a huge differential between the actual value of the money and the oil that's there. So something needs to get done, and that is the supply needs to be opened back up. And that's why we all are paying for $5 gas and $4 loaves of bread and things like that. Especially if you live on the West Coast, it's ridiculous. $7 gas, or if you live in DC, it's $6 gas.
I got a question, real quick. Just thinking about it. Now you talk about the subsidies, and all right, here's a good one for you to think about, and maybe you can help analyze and give a good answer for it. Why is it that the farmers in the United States are told not to grow crops, and they're being paid significantly more?
Right. Well, see, now we're going to go into politics a little bit.
All right.
And I don't know if this is a political show, but the truth of the matter is that there's a global effort to centralize everything, whether it's crops, whether it's fuel, whether it's education. See, it gets really political when you start talking about that.
You can go dig into the pot, brother, because you know something? You're the educated one here, and you know the systems. Your play field. Go have fun.
All right. Well, thank you. So there's a thing that's happening around the world, and it's kind of goes back to what they've been trying to push on us since the 70s and 80s with the green agenda. Basically trying to get people to go green. But if you look at things, like for example, electric cars, they're really not that green because a factory, a power generation facility had to burn coal to generate that power, or burn natural gas or burn something. Very little of it is from wind and solar. The majority of it comes from our power grid, which is powered by coal. Okay, so you got that part. The other part is they believe that only certain countries should produce food. Certain countries should produce, and if you're a country that doesn't produce food, then you need to produce something else to pay for that food. So again, this goes against all the financial models and processes that we're taught in school, and that is we're supposed to have an economic model where we use an economy that uses money to purchase goods and services, whereas they want to create a world where only certain groups of people can generate certain resources and they can control it centrally from a centralized government. And right now, there is an organization called the World Economic Forum, WEF, and they believe that they are the world government. It was going to be the UN, but the UN can't decide on anything. They're all busy fighting each other. And so they decided, you know what, we're not going to worry about the stuffed suits at the UN. So the World Economic Forum, who are they? They are the CEOs. They're the owners of banks. They are the owners of corporations. So everybody who's somebody from the United States who owns the big corporations, Coca-Cola, Pepsi, your major IT companies, your entertainment companies, all of Hollywood, they all find their way to the WEF, the World Economic Forum, and they believe that they can set policy. And so they're the ones who are the driving force behind the COVID vaccine, behind the green agenda. They call it the Green New Deal, where they want by 2030 to have all gasoline cars off the road. Good luck there. Where they want people to eat just vegetables, no more meat.
What? No more meat?
No more meat.
I just had a great steak today. I'm sorry. You gonna tell me I can't have a steak? I mean, you're in Texas. You can't have a steak?
Oh, I actually have a cow living right in my backyard. So,
what's your cow name, brother?
Is that why there's Impossible Burgers now?
So we are up against a group of people who really don't live in reality, because when they want a hamburger, they can get it at any time of the day or night, because they have people who serve them hand and foot. They have cooks. They have people who wait on them. I mean, these are the super rich. I mean, we're not even talking Hollywood rich. We're talking people who have servants rich. And they believe that they can control the world because they're rich. And that's the problem with the WEF. And see, again, we don't even have to talk about political parties. This is about good versus evil. They're evil. And all they care about is reducing the world population and hurting people, and they don't care who they hurt as long as they get what they want. And right now they're trying to buy up as much farmland as possible. I don't know if you've been watching the news about all the companies that are, especially Bill Gates, who's buying up all this land everywhere, all the farmland, because this is part of their plan, and that is they want to create these huge corporate farms. And they will only give the food to the people, let me back up, not give, sell. They will sell the food to the people that they believe are worthy of it. It's not a free market.
Hold on. That's socialism.
And
fascism.
It's terrible. That's what it is.
That's not going to work, because you have a country of people that want to strive to help their family. You got a world of people that want to support each other, and you're going to tell me I'm under the foot of some rich dude who's going to get richer. Hold on. Nope, he's not going to get richer. He becomes autonomous. He becomes godlike, because he's going to eliminate the function of currency.
Yes. And then you eat because he says you can eat.
And you stop working when he says you can stop working.
That's correct.
You know something? The people of the world really need to understand that point of view. And honestly, I know Rowena's going to have to bring you back on this show, because you know it's going to get me. Look. I get hot, okay? And I got a lot of listeners they're loving what you were saying about let's go to college, make a plan, and grow from that. But what they're doing at the World Economic Conference policies is negating everything that you're trying to achieve.
That's correct.
India is not going to be a breadbasket. I mean, come on. How many monsoons do they have a year? Never going to be a breadbasket. Maybe a technological. Oh, no. They're going to be the phone center. Yeah. What do you think? According to their will, it's going to be the phone center. I mean, this is going to, the world that you're trying to create, that we want to see, and the one we're trying to talk about, bettering the lifestyles of individuals around the world, not just this country, but around the world, because we are a global network, is being just negatively beat down by this world economic system that they want to achieve. I'm standing on my side. I'm going to stand my ground over Rowena. I know Emperor. I know you definitely, Dr. Perez, are going to stand your ground. But we need more warriors to stand the ground to say, hey, you know something? There's two sides to this. The side is for the people, and the side is for the slaves. Or the slave owner. And I'm not a slave owner. I'm for my people.
That's right.
Like I tell people, I'm a nationalist. I support my country. I support what they do. But when you start going haywire and your mindset goes Looney Tunes, I got to support the people only. I'm not even going to look at my flag, even though I served. I'm going to support my people. Because the people of the United States need more than me than that flag, because we are the ones that make that flag. Sorry, I had to make my speech, and I didn't want to go. I don't want to go there. All right, y'all talk. You just got me hot. Tell me more about this working on my thing, man. Whoo, Lordy. And I'm down in North Carolina right now in Greensboro. So what's up, brother? I'm from Smithfield.
All right, I'm from Fayetteville.
Oh, man. I could tell you stories about Fayetteville. Never mind.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Tales from the Merc.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question, Dr. Perez. I wrote down lots of notes, and there's a common theme with the things that you've shared with us today. So first of all, it's an internal thing. It's an internal decision, right? You got to get out of your own way. And then take the accountability. You have to assume the accountability, be accountable, be responsible, in getting yourself better so you can eventually make an impact, because all those education is not yours. And as you are, I'm very hopeful, because hopefully I'm in the same path as yours. The little things that you learn here and there will eventually come to place and then have an impact in the world. That's awesome to hear. Now, would you kindly share with us who was the most influential person in your life, or who motivated you to become who you are now? Because I see you as one of the people that see the glass half full and rise above adversity.
Thank you. Well, to address the glass, it's actually it's not the glass that we should be looking at. It's the sky, because the sky is the limit.
I love that. That's a new thing. Yeah, there's a different perspective, right?
Yeah, you can see my background, right? That's the thing.
That's the background. I think ours is similar. It's just an abstract version of the sky.
So, and I had a lot of good people step into my life. Of course, I had at the very beginning, my discipline was knocked into me by my karate master, Kimo Ferreira. He's still alive. He lives in Hawaii. He's a great man, and he taught me Kempo, karate, and I had the benefit of learning discipline from him. Physical discipline, control over myself, control over my body, control over my mind, being able to temper my spirit, because that's what we are. We're mind, body, spirit. That's what we are. We're living trinities. And he taught me how to respect each component of myself, my life, and to help me take care of my mind and my body so that my spirit can then be in control. Because it's our spirit that controls everything. That's the part of us that goes back to where, after we're alive, after we die, our spirit goes back to the source. And it comes with its hands full with experience and knowledge. And so he taught me that at an early age through martial arts, that once we temper our passions, we temper our bodies, we fill our minds with knowledge, then our spirit is free to do the work it was sent to do. Because that's what we all do here on earth. We are all sent to do a mission. And it's our spirit that has that mission. And it's our bodies and our minds that fulfill the mission. And so Kimo Ferreira was the first one. The next person was Chancellor Hackley. He's the one who gave me my scholarship at UNC, Fayetteville State University, University of North Carolina. He saw in me a lot of potential. In fact, I spoke to him last year. He's very up there in years. He's frail. He's been retired for at least a decade or two. But Chancellor Hackley has always been somebody who was an example. He was not one of those stuffy academics. He was always cheerful. He always had a joke. But he would always make you accountable, because every time I ran into him on campus, he would say, "How are your grades?" And I would say, "Oh, straight A's." He says, "Good, keep it that way." And so he would make me accountable. And that's the type of leaders and teachers that we need in all levels of education, whether it's kindergarten or college. We need to make our children accountable. And we need to ask them, "How are your grades? How are you doing?" And it lets the children know that we're interested and that we care. And it's not just children. I mean, if you think about it, even college, young adults in college, they're still kids at heart. You should see some of my students; they are kids, and so you've got to keep them accountable, but also treat them, with a little bit of tenderness, and give them the support that they need, because mom and dad, they're not there anymore. Mom and dad's not present. And so we have to develop strong leaders, and how we do that is, a little bit of tenderness, a little bit of understanding, and that gives them the motivation to not quit.
Keep going. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, and so I had several people along my path, and in fact, I had sent Rowena a really huge research statement, and I mean, literally, I sent her like 3 files full of stuff. And I did mention some people that did make a difference in my research career. Some people that you probably don't know about, but they're the inventors of technology that we enjoy. So if you're familiar with using the Apple Cloud, for your music and for your files, the OneDrive from Microsoft, anything that has anything to do with the cloud, I had a personal relationship with the inventors of the technology.
Wow!
And
for us.
And my PhD is actually has a lot of that in it. So so a lot of their research is, and that's how PhDs work, by the way. You build your work on top of the work of other people, and that's what PhDs are. So in high school, you make the grade by passing exams. Same thing with your 4-year degree and your master's. You take tests and you make the grade. PhD is the only degree where it's not like that, where you take someone else's idea and you make it better.
Take it up a notch.
That's right. And so I took what they did and I kicked it up a notch. And so the next person who comes after me has to take what I did and add to that. And so whenever you hear of people, with advanced degrees, just remember, it's not just theirs. They're actually standing on the shoulders of giants. But go ahead.
So Jerry, you had mentioned this project that you're working on now. Could you tell us more about it?
I work on several projects. Can you be a little more specific?
The one that you sent me, the project that you're working on, that are you doing something with artificial intelligence?
Oh yes. So
tell us about that. Is that a scary thing, or is that innovative?
Oh, it's
What is your take on AI?
Well, see, we all use AI every day. It's integrated in everything, especially if you have a car and you're backing up into something. That has an AI system that's taking real-time data and converting it into a picture so that you don't back your car up into a pole. So if you've got that already, you've got AI already. Your bank accounts, if for whatever reasons you decide to withdraw $10,000, the AI system's going to trip off, and you're going to get a call from the bank, and they just want to make sure it's you and not some kid from Belarus that's making a withdrawal. So AI has its place now. I think we've all seen too much Terminator movies. And I think even Elon Musk is a little alarmist about AI. But the truth of the matter is AI is only as evil as the person who made it. And I would say that the person who designed your backup system in your car probably doesn't want to take over the world with it. But I understand what Elon's talking about when he complains about how AI could subjugate us. So, like, what if somebody did create an AI to watch its people? And I think he was talking about China and their social score system. That's an AI, by the way. It's a system that keeps track of everybody's motion, their movements, their attitudes, what they say on the internet. The system has the ability to read what they say and do, and then make a score. You know,
Wow.
so if the score is good, then you get to fly, you get to go on the train, you get to go to the grocery store. But if you're bad for whatever reasons, then you're not allowed to get on a train. You're not allowed to leave your town. You can only go shopping during a certain time of day,
Wow.
so that the police can watch you. Yes, that AI is bad. Now, here's the problem, and I think this is where Elon got a little nervous, and that is, what if that system starts looking at us? I mean, think about it. It's all on the internet, right? And all of our lives are on the internet. You got Facebook. I got Facebook. We have Instagram. We have Twitter. I don't know for how long though, but we all have social media. What's to keep that system from looking at our social media? What's to keep that system from scoring us, Americans? And we didn't even sign up to be Chinese, but there's nothing stopping that system from looking at us because we have a digital footprint. So I think that's what Elon was worried about. So I don't think here in America we're going to make anything that's going to take over the world. What we have to worry about are countries who don't have freedom in mind, who don't have their people in mind, and they develop AI specifically to spy on its people. Of course, in the communist China, spying isn't a word. In fact, they don't have a word for that. To them, it's being informed, and that your loyalty to the state is of utmost importance. So to them, it's not spying. To them, it's repudiation. It's making sure that you are who you are, and they have a system that will back it up. And so that's scary. That's scary AI. And of course, it gets enforced because they can turn off your credit card. They can turn off your car. I mean, you saw what happened in Canada, right, with the protesters who protested with the truck drivers. Their credit cards got turned off, and they've been working with companies that acted like despots. PayPal and Visa. They've worked hand in hand with the Canadian government, and they turned off access to credit and to bank accounts of people who are protesting peacefully, mind you, against the Canadian government. So I think that's where AI goes bad. The AI I'm talking about, that Rose talking about, is the AI that I use to help train the UTD chess team, and it's using Google's AlphaZero technology. It's basically a program that teaches itself how to do things. So AlphaZero taught itself chess. No one taught it chess. It taught itself chess, and it's the strongest chess engine in the world. And so this is how we train human chess players how to get good at chess. And the interesting thing was AlphaZero was able to solve some chess problems that haven't been solvable in a couple of 100 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So AlphaZero is not human. So it's able to explore all the different possibilities. And I don't know if the audience is aware that in chess, there are more moves in chess than there are atoms in the universe. So you need to have something. Yes. So you need to have something that will test the possibilities of the unknown. Humans have only explored less than 1% of 1% of chess moves in the middle game. The rest is unknown. And so this is why chess is exciting, because you have no idea what you're going to see, especially with the high-level chess players. You have no idea what moves are going to be moved. And so AlphaZero has actually explored the unknown, the unexplored parts of chess.
Wow.
Yeah. So with that, it's teaching our chess players how to become very good human chess players, because they're learning moves that never existed before. And of course, what's the fruit of this study? The UTD chess team is in the top 3 chess teams in the United States.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I think what we're doing is working.
You mentioned you had a degree in math, right?
Yes.
Do you think a lot of the things in the world is all math or mostly math?
I tend to think that it all can be represented with math, but I can also see that it can all be represented with music, because math and music are connected to each other.
So let's learn violin. I can be better at that.
Everything has a pattern. Everything has a frequency, and we can match that with music. We can also explain it with math. Math is just the language of reality. You can describe everything with math.
That's awesome.
Well, let's go out into the crazy world a little bit. See, I'm one of the people that takes it to the extreme. The crazy world would be, they say that we're receiving signals from the SETI and other satellites of signals from space. Are they mathematically, do we have a mathematical way of really detecting these signals? Do we have a mathematical way of analyzing these signals? And do we have a mathematical way of taking the signals and translating them into our terminology? That's a question for you, because that's all based in movies. Like most of the people out there that are listening and think they're, I've been out in space. No, you haven't been nowhere. But let's go back to the point. Is it mathematical?
Oh, absolutely. And how we've asked the question, especially, he's dead now, but a astrophysicist named Carl Sagan.
I knew you wanted to go there.
He helped develop what's called the NASA disk, and it was put on the outside casing of the Voyager mission.
Right.
And it basically had a basic numerical system, base 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Also, it had a dictionary for binary, 1 and 0. And so he had also put a recording of human voices, animals, and he also had engraved a picture of a naked man and a naked woman to show what we look like, very basic drawing, and also a diagram of our solar system, where we live, and things like that. He was able to basically set the ground rules for communication between us and whoever's out there. And of course, the question is, well, have they had a chance to respond to us? Did they get a chance to talk? Yes. And of course, we have these things called crop circles. Mm-hmm. They've replied in crop circles. They've been real careful about replying back digitally. I think it's because we're very basic, I would say. We use radio. Radio is only good within the solar system. If you're an intergalactic civilization, you're going to use something else to communicate, not radio. So I would say we're like communicating with smoke signals. And I think it'd actually take a lot of great effort to understand the things that we send out into outer space, because, we think we're advanced with our huge telescopes and our huge dishes that send out signals to outer space. But the signals we send out are very basic. In fact, after a certain period of time, they break down. No one can really understand them, because they use what we call point-to-point communication. In other words, if let's say that you're on another planet in the solar system, let's say Mars, and you send a message from Earth, it's going to take 28 minutes for that message to go from Earth to Mars, because that's the speed of light. That's really slow in terms of galactic speeds. If we sent the message out to Alpha Centauri, that message, it wouldn't get there for 15 years?
Correct.
So that's a very long phone conversation. So I don't think we're we're not using the right forum for the communication. But at least I think we've gotten some attention, because we've sent out these data disks, designed by Sagan and people like him at NASA, and we've received responses in crop circles. One of the disks that we sent out had the basic human genetic code, AGCT.
Right.
Those are the letters that are used to make up our genetic code. the aliens actually created crop circles that not only described their genetic code, but also their chemistry. Where we're more sodium based, they are more chloride based. So, in other words, here on Earth, our blood is more red in color. Their blood is probably more on the purple side.
Oh.
Wow. And you.
So they go ahead.
The funny thing is, you're saying send out a basic image of what a male and a female looks like, and then I started laughing because I was thinking, well, how you gonna describe Admiral Rachel Levine?
Yeah. So these are just like line drawings, I would say. They're not like, really detailed.
I had to go there. I had to go there, right?
I'm
a Navy man, so I had to go to Rachel Levine. I'm like,
right.
Yeah, you know what I mean. I had to go there.
But just to give people an idea about what we look like, kind of, and I'm assuming that if they're able to come in and create crop circles and communicate with very large, complex data just in crops, they were able to put in binary information about the location of their world, the technology that they use, their physiology, all in one crop circle.
Yes.
That's amazing. I mean, crops.
It's a lot of data.
They communicated with grass.
Well, you also have to think about, in Peru they have on the mountainside they have the description of animals that have been there for centuries.
Yeah.
And I mean, the Nazca lions and other things. One more question. I got a good one for you. Whew. I would just love to just dip into your brain a little bit. Can we go overtime, ladies? This is really good. What do you think of when going back to the WHO and all those little world, meaning United Federation of Planets type thing? It's kind of scary because it takes the individuality away from us all. Do you think there's a way that a system like that could help society, or will it be a detriment to society? I.e., look at the way we reacted to the COVID-19. I'm going to say the letters out loud because I really don't care what they do. They can kick me off of YouTube again. I mean, NIH said it was a whole farce. And I know you read the report, and the one but the World Health Organization and, our boy, I ain't gonna say his name because I don't want to give him any credibility, who was advising the president and the world about COVID-19. I don't want to give him the drop of credit. Basically, we used up old supplies. And most Americans don't, and the people around the world don't even realize these masks that they were getting from the store were like 30, 40 years old. And the toilet paper ran out of supply. It was still there since 1970s. So, I mean, this is old supply that we used up in because of a virus in 2 years. Do you think that organizations like the World Health and other organizations as such could benefit society, or is it benefiting big business? And does big business even care about the people we're trying to help?
Well, that's a good question. Well, my first statement is currently big government and big business, they're sick. They're not well, and they really don't care about the people. They care about one, their authority, their power, their money, and that two, that people fall in line with what they say. And so that's what this whole pandemic was about. In fact, the pandemic was modeled 3 years ago, and Bill Gates was involved with that. And so they wanted to see how compliant people are. Now, here's good news. Only 30% of the people fell for it. The other 70% are pissed off. And that's why you see right now around the world, all the current leaders, you just see Sri Lanka, their leaders no more. Boris Johnson in England, he is no more. Angela Merkel from Germany, she is no more. The people are waking up, and the people are saying no more. This is enough. And of course the big business and the big governments like the WEF, they're going to try to fight back, and they're going to try to make things difficult for the regular people by burning farms, burning grocery stores, killing chickens, destroying
killing cattle like they did in the Midwest.
That's right. And they think by making us afraid of starvation. Well, guess what? I would say with all certainty, the 70% of us that are angry, we grew up starving. We know what it means to starve.
Yep. Beans and rice, baby.
Yeah, you feed an army with those. So we're not afraid to go without. We're not afraid to suffer because that's all we did. And while these rich people got richer, while these oligarchs got more power, the people will have their chance to get back through organized and fair elections. And that's what we have to do. We have to change the way elections are run. Even Stalin had said, it's not the voter that matters, but it's the person who counts the votes that matters. And so we need to bring sanity to the election process, pull politics out of it. No, we're not going to take rights away from minorities. No, we're not going to take rights away from people or disenfranchise people because we won't allow them to stuff ballot boxes. What is a voting right is people who will be allowed to submit one vote per adult who is eligible to a vote.
I like where you said that. I like the way you said that. Who is eligible to vote. That's a key one because they let people right across the border vote.
All the time. And that has to change. And I believe in my heart of hearts, that's going to change this time around. That's what 2020 was about. It was a wake-up call to people that if you're not going to be politically active, well, guess what? Someone's going to take your vote and use it against you. There's a lot of folks who claim they didn't vote, but yet they can look on the records and they realize that they voted. So there is a lot of fraud. We have technology that can undo that. And fortunately, there are some honorable military organizations that watch the vote, but they have to wait until they are given permission to verify the vote. But that's going to happen shortly, I believe, before the next presidential election. And it's going to be pure data. It's going to talk about where every vote came from, which country a lot of these votes were moved over to and manipulated and brought back. And you're going to hear about Germany. This is why Angela Merkel, she's no longer part of the German leadership because she was part of it. So a lot of these people that you see are leaving office, they were part of the fix. And that's why a lot of these people are quitting.
Or running. So in the essence of don't be a Cinderella, what could you tell the public, I'm not going to say the American public, the public, meaning the world public, about what can we do to better ourselves as humans to prepare our children for a brighter and better tomorrow? And you can go any direction you want. I don't care which direction. I just want to know what can we do, because right now we got a lost generation. We got third graders that can't read or write, that can't even spell their name. They don't know the alphabet. We got second graders that are more like pre-Kers that are just lost in the system because they stopped education for a reason. What can we do to better it? I mean, I would say, on my behalf, I would say, be a parent, teach your child, and show your child the right direction to become a better citizen so that when time comes to go to school, that child is prepared. But what would you say?
Well, I would take that, and I would add that the amount of money that we are throwing at bad schools needs to go to the parents, especially if they're taking the time to educate their children.
I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you.
And that's how we're going to help them, because at the end of the day, the parents are the first teachers. And if they don't have the tools if they don't have the resources like a good computer or even food. I keep coming back to that. That is like one of the greatest things that keeps students from succeeding is they're hungry. I mean, try eating for not 3 days, and then I give you a task and see if you can do it. Your mind's not on the task. You're worried about this feeling you have in your stomach because it's empty, and you're tired because you don't have any energy. This is the state of young people and the poor. I mean, this has been going on since poor people have been invented. And then people will just look down their noses and say, well, why doesn't that poor person just get a job? Well, it's because they don't have what it takes to get that job because they don't have the basics. Now, if they had the basics, then sure, yeah, they can learn. They can get off their they can get on their feet and learn. And I'm not talking welfare. I'm talking there are folks who just need the basics. And again, we've already legislatively set money aside for every student in the country. Every child has over $6,800 allocated from the government. And it's been going to schools that are useless.
Give it to the parents and let the parents teach them farming. Let the parents teach them how to take care of animals. Let the parents teach them fishing. Let the parents take them on nature hikes so they can see these trees and experience nature in its whole. California says they do not have enough water, so they want to stop the farming. Excuse me, you got ocean water right out there. You can convert ocean water into fresh water. It's been done since World War II.
Right? Yeah, but
What's wrong with this?
They have to create a problem so that they can solve it. And the only way they're going to solve it is if you vote for them.
Oh.
And so that's the catch. But that's going to change because again, 70% of the people are now awake, and they're going to stand up against this. We don't need to be starving. We don't need to be ignorant. We don't need to be jobless either. And the nature of money is going to change too. We're not going to be allowed to print money anymore in the near future. Right now, our money's worthless because they just went through this huge print fest and they gave it out not to us. We only got scraps. They gave billions to foreign countries for whatever reasons.
For their war with Russia, we've given over $20 billion when we got people living in tents right in front of the U.S. Capitol.
Right, and if they did get stimulus, it was like maybe $1,500.
Man, that was pennies. Hey, go to Canada, everybody, if that's the case, because Canada was giving it out weekly.
Yeah, so we as the people are going to change that, and we will have the will to do that, and you're going to see that. And in fact, everybody in earshot this November, vote and make sure that you research who you vote for. If they are voting for higher taxes, if they are voting for world government, if they are voting for higher taxes for the people, don't vote for them because they are not your friends. Even though they say they back you, they'll say that they look like you and talk like you. Don't believe them. Don't believe them. They're not for you. They're for themselves, and they're for whoever their masters are, whoever they serve, because they don't serve you.
Isn't it a shame?
So vote America first. Find the people who will back up the United States, who will reduce taxes, who are pro you. Those are the people you vote for.
Vote for the people that will say we can use our own oil because we got so much oil here. We can run our own oil and refine it in the United States of America instead of going to OPEC.
That's correct.
That was a stupid. Sorry, you know I'm about to see. Come on, you gotta say it. That was stupid. That was retarded. See, this is why we don't want to be Cinderella. Being Cinderella means to go with the stupid, to go with the ignorant, to go with, hey, you know something? Let's just all go to the moon and live there where there are no houses there. We'll build houses. Okay. There's no oxygen or good atmosphere for us to build houses on the moon. It's okay. A lot of you will die, but we have a better life here on Earth. That's the stupidity that you don't want to be Cinderella, looking for the imaginary place that's, no, stop it. Live the life that Cinderella should have lived. One that was beautiful, bountiful, instead of the one being pressured and judged by her parents, chased around, and having to call upon a fairy godmother. Well, we got two fairy godmothers in here, don't we? We got the godmother Amber, godmother Rowena, and oh, hold on, we got a godfather, Dr. Jerry Perez. I mean, listen, honestly, this show is off the chain tonight. Sorry, we gotta talk, Jerry. I'm getting off. I'm not gonna say that no more. Rowena, y'all two girls talk.
All right. Well,
love it.
thank you so much. Thank you so much, Jerry, for being on the show. I really appreciate everything that you've said. You've really enlightened us, educated us about planning for our future and planning for our kids and how important that is. All of you out there, if you want more information about financial literacy, please email don'tbecinderella@gmail.com. And Jerry, if do you want to be contacted, or what way? If you want to talk to Jerry, just email me, and I can forward your question. So email at don'tbecinderella@gmail.com. And thank you very much, and I appreciate you being on the show.
You're most welcome.
Just remember, don't be Cinderella. Create your own future, and live happily ever after.
Thanks so much, Jerry.